by just saying, no, I don't do that anymore, or I don't accept that, or just no. I learned that you don't even have to have an excuse. You can just say that doesn't work for me. No. And people will learn to respect it and they will learn how and where to show up in your life, and your relationships can become deeper, the ones that matter.
Welcome to Women Thrive podcast. This is where you'll get to hear incredible stories of female entrepreneurs, business owners, women from all walks of life. Myself, Raymond Jan, and my co-host Abigail will be interviewing incredible women, hearing inspiring stories of women from all around the world. I have no doubt that you will find something that will be life-changing for you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join us for our future episodes.
So hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Women Thrive podcast. My name is Abigail Rebecca, and today we're talking about nice girls, right? So Women Thrive, we're always talking about reclaiming your power, speaking your truth, finding your voice. How many of you can relate to this nice girl persona that we can often put on, or we might have put on throughout our lives, because we don't want to ruffle any feathers. We want everyone to like us. We want everything to be peaceful. And actually what it does in the long term is that it really disempowers us, because all of our boundaries, well, there's no boundaries at all in place. And it gives other people permission to maybe treat us in a way that is not very nice, or that disempowers us, or it really shows that we're not valued. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. I can really resonate with this. So I know it's going to be a really juicy conversation. And I am very, very excited to introduce one of our incredible speakers from the Women Thrive Summit. Her name is Amy Sanders. She is a serial entrepreneur, certified business and mindset coach. And Amy, she's going to share her story with us, but she has overcome many traumatic events in her life that have shaped her into who she is today. And this includes losing her sister to suicide, abuse, divorce, being a broke single mom, and deep betrayal, trauma recovery. And after hitting rock bottom, Amy realized she could actually change her stars. Really inspirational. She learned to speak her voice, take her power back, and move to self-trust, which changed the trajectory of her life. Amy, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. It's such an honor. I'm so excited to be here. And thank you for that amazing introduction.
I have been really excited to interview you and to share your wonderful energy and zone of genius with our audience. But before we dive into all of that, we touched there on your story. I'd really love to hear a little bit more about your story, because, I mean, it sounds like there's been a lot of trauma in your life, right?
Yes, yes. In fact, my friend a couple years ago, I was faced with some other deep traumatic trauma that I just did not see coming. And my friend said, you know what? I think when you were up in heaven and God was like, who wants to take this? Who wants to take that? Anyone to raise your hand for this? She's like, I think you raised your hand for everything. And I mean, I actually do think that, yeah, I think I raised my hand for just about everything. But with that being said, I've learned a lot. And I think that I needed to go through a lot of the things I went through in order to serve to my full capacity and help women learn to speak their voice, learn to step into their power, learn to see how amazingly beautiful we all are. And so I always laugh because when people said, yeah, it sounds like you've been through a lot. It just reminds me of my friend who's like, yeah, you raised your hand to everything is what I think. I'm like, maybe. So let me just dive in a little bit about my story, my journey, and then what's brought me to this point in my life. So when I was younger, I was born in a very religious family with lots of kids. There were seven of us. And wait, did you have more kids than that? I think you had even a bigger family than I did. Did you?
No, no, no. There were only three of us.
Three. Okay. I
Yeah.
was I was off there. I was like, wait, did you have more than me? Anyway,
No.
so seven kids, and my parents, they came from crazier backgrounds than I did. And so when I look back, I'm like, okay, they never really healed their traumas. I don't think a lot of people back then did. And so they brought everything from their past lives into this newly found religious family. They both joined this church, and it was hard. There were five girls, two boys in my family, and us girls, they required a lot of us, and they also expected us to do anything and everything anyone ever asks of us. I don't even know why I'm saying this on the podcast, but I am. So I would have to like massage my dad, including his gross feet, every single night, like pull the socks off. He'd sit in his chair, and then me and my sisters would basically give him a spa service every night. And not because we wanted to, and that sounds really nice, but it was actually like something that just disgusted me completely. The back was hairy, like it was just gross. And that's just like a small little example. But the whole point is it didn't matter what we wanted, we could not ask for that. And when we did, we would get in trouble. And so it was like down to even the massaging of my dad every single night. It was like we were worked to the bone. We couldn't ask for what we wanted. And we absolutely had to say yes, especially if they were male. If they were a male, it was whatever they want. We say yes. And what happened was I got so used to saying yes to everybody else that I forgot what I even wanted. I remember getting so scared. In fact, I still struggle to use my voice at times. It still comes up. But I remember being so scared to try out for choir that was like a performing choir. All of my friends were trying out for this choir. And honestly, I had a better voice than most of my friends did, but I was so scared for someone, the choir director, to tell me that I didn't make it, that I didn't even try out. Like I was so scared to hear the word no because it's like all I ever heard in my family if I did ask for something that I just stopped asking for anything because then I would never hear that word, which was super triggering to me. But I did also learn how to just be really agreeable. And what this looked like was fast forward a few years, I'm dating a guy and we're dating for 3 weeks. And he gets on his knee and proposes like one Christmas evening. And I was like freaking out. My entire body was completely alarmed. I was shaking. I felt sick to my stomach. I was like completely having a nervous breakdown as he's getting down on his one knee because I knew that there was no way I was supposed to marry this guy. Like, no, this is not right for me. Like, I know it's not right for me, but I was so scared to tell him no that I told him yes. But how I told him yes was, well, did you ask my dad? Because I'm like, surely he hasn't asked my dad. So I'm like, my dad's my out. I'm like, surely there's no way he's asked my dad. And he's like, oh, well, yeah, I asked him. And he said, well, if it's okay with him, it's okay with you. He'd met my dad one time. And my dad's like, yeah, sure, marry her. Like, what? This does not make sense. But I was like, oh, okay, then, yeah, sure. That was the engagement. And it wasn't romantic. In fact, the ring that he like brought to me didn't even have a like diamond in it. So it was just these empty prongs. So I couldn't even put them on my finger and like say, hey, look, I'm engaged. I'm so excited. Like I couldn't even show anyone the ring. Instead, I just like put it in my pocket and like was just like freaking out, so scared. So anyway, I like to tell that story because it's like even down to the biggest decision of your life, I did not choose myself. And what that turned into was more trauma and a really horrific marriage. We were just very unhealthy, lots of emotional abuse. There was toxicity, there was infidelity, there was a lot of things that were just not acceptable that I would accept because, again, I was taught and trained that you do not divorce no matter what.
Mm.
No matter what, like you made these covenants, you made these commitments, you stick with them no matter what. And I stayed married for 11 years and three kids later. So, and really ultimately what got me out of that marriage was my kids, because I started really looking at myself and being like, this is not what I envisioned for me. Even though I didn't grow up in like a really healthy childhood, like I had dreams and goals and I was so far from them. I was so broke. I was so broken. I was like, there's no way that this is what my life is supposed to be like. But the biggest thing that shifted for me was the fact that I looked at my cute little kids and I was like, I do not, under any circumstance, want them to think that this is acceptable. Want them to see that the boys can treat girls like this and that my daughter should accept this. Like, this is not okay. But again, if we look at it, like I did choose that. I did say yes, even though it was because of my fears and my trauma and trigger, whatever. Like I did marry the guy. I went through with it. And since then, things have gotten easier with him. It took a lot of years. So our relationship isn't as rocky as it was when we were married or when we were the 10 years after. But from there, I now entered a new world of being a broke single mom because I thought I was broke married to him. Now I was living on $24,000 a year, US dollars, with three little kids on my own. That's not a lot of money.
No.
And so I had to get really strappy, but that's when things really started turning around for me is little by little I started choosing myself and I started really asking myself like, okay, let's start simple. What do you want to do today? Like what is something that you actually want to do? And as I started asking myself those little questions, what do you believe can be true for you? It's like all this discovery is what then started helping my life unfold. And since then, it's been an incredible journey. Of course, there's been more trauma. Of course, there's always life that happens. But ultimately, like I now live this dream lifestyle that I had always dreamed about, but I didn't think it was ever going to become a reality for me. I live in a beautiful neighborhood. I live in a multi-million-dollar home. I have a pool in the backyard. We travel all the time. And I don't say this out of like, oh, look at me, look at me. I say this like it is possible for anybody because if you look at the cards, they were all stacked against me. You know, everything was stacked against me. But it was like, again, coming back to once you start to find yourself and once you start to find your power and your voice and you start to really question what else can be possible for me, the world opens up, the universe opens up, and you can create whatever you want. And so that is, I don't know, Cliff's Notes version of my story.
Oh, Amy. Well, first of all, congratulations for everything that you've created.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much for sharing the story. You know, we've had conversations off camera. I remember the first time that we met on a Zoom call and we shared our stories. And even though it was a different childhood, of course, I can really relate because I was brought
Mhm.
up also in a religious family, religious community where I was very disempowered as a woman. And you get trained, basically trained into not having an opinion, not having a voice, this whole rejection thing. No. And isn't it interesting how it shows up in your life and your business, right? Because I mean, I've done so much work. I've done so much personal development. And I'm so happy with the way that I am now in life. But still, after years and years of speaking on stages, I still get really nervous when I speak on a stage because I'm like, oh, what if people don't like me or reject me? It's like this. I want to be center stage, but also I don't because I spent all of my childhood just being like numbed down, dumbed down, and not being able to have a voice. So, just congratulations for everything that you're doing, the speaking, writing your book, like in your business. I just really want to give you huge, huge kudos for all of that because it's amazing.
Oh,
So, thank
thank
you for
you.
sharing that. Now, there will be so many people that are listening to this now that will probably want to ask this question as well. So, you've just shared the story with us. But one of the things that you were talking about is that you were a broke, single mum. If it was written down as a story, it's like, where is this life going to go? You know, where is it going to lead
Yes.
now? And now you're talking about the fact that you have created this beautiful, like, life of abundance and prosperity. Like, how did you turn that around? Because I'm sure every single person wants to know this. And I know that it's not going to be an overnight thing, but I'd really love to know, like, where did you start? Because you were talking about asking the universe or expressing what you
Mhm.
desired. Like, is it really as simple as starting like that?
Yes, it actually is. I know it doesn't sound like it. The biggest thing is you have to believe that it can happen for you, though.
Mm,
And so, and going back, just rewinding a little bit to being a broke single mom, it was hard. I mean, when I left my husband, I left a lot of relationships because, again, the religion, I felt like I had the scarlet letter on my head because I had decided to not put up with certain behaviors anymore. I was like, how is this okay? And I had to dig deep, like, okay, so if I believe in a God, then I believe he loves me. And if I believe that he loves me, I believe that he wants me to be happy. If I believe he wants me to be happy, then I believe that I can have whatever I want. Like, so it was really coming back to that. Like, okay, what do I truly believe? If I peel off all of the layers, if I peel off all the conditioning, if I just look at me and I look at what can be true for me, then what does that look like? And so that's where it ultimately started. Now, you can't just sit and twiddle your thumbs and say, I want all the abundance in the world. I want to be a multimillionaire and know that it's going to happen for you because it won't. You have to have action. Like faith without works is dead, right? So you have to have faith that it can happen for you, but then you also have to go to work. You have to do both. And so this is all Amy philosophy. I mean, it's worked for me. So I call it Amy philosophy. Take what you want, leave what you don't. But I believe that if you put the work towards the faith of what you want, and you truly believe that this can happen for you, the ways will open up. And you might not know how they open up. Like it's little steps over time. And so I will tell you guys like what I have done because I think that it's nice to know the how. It's not like it just, and it does not happen overnight. It for me, it did happen pretty quickly when I look at the timing of things. Like I was like, oh wow, like I was a broke single mom living on nothing and making deals with my landlord and could not afford to go to McDonald's. I was that broke. And 5 years later, I was living in a multi-million-dollar home, putting my kids in extracurricular activities that I only used to dream about and taking them to Hawaii. Like I was like, what? That when you look at like time, 5 years goes by really quickly, but the day to day felt like a while. And so, what this looked like for me and my husband was I did remarry, and also I married him broke. So, I don't, just to be clear, I wasn't one of those that got swept off my feet. And then now I lived lap of luxury because he was also like living large. So, him and I came together and we rolled up our sleeves. I'm a huge believer in multiple streams of income. And so we started looking at different ways to do that. And when we built our house, we had zero idea how we were actually going to finance the thing because he was coming out of a bankruptcy. So he had bankruptcy on his name. And I was coming, my credit score at the time was like in the 400s because my ex husband had killed my credit. And so you look at us and we could have said, according to society, this won't work for us. This won't happen for us now. There's no way. Look at our stats. Like, but we didn't. We instead said, let's get creative. So
Mm.
when we built our house, we did a lot of the work initially. We didn't know how that would pan out down the road, and we did everything. He had a little bit of money in his 401k when we first started building this house in this neighborhood that made 0 cents. Okay. And I'm telling the story because it will make sense. So when we finally moved into this house and I had no idea how we got in here, it was because of the faith of what we had decided was going to happen for us. The house we built was a house we found 2 weeks after we started dating, and we were both obsessed with it, and we took pictures of it. He actually proposed to me, and when he proposed to me, I mean, like time down the road when he proposes, he put that house in the book, and we would look at it all the time. And so when you look at manifesting, it was happening whether we wanted to recognize it or not. And so we were looking at that book. We loved that house. And all of a sudden, a year after marriage, we come down this road. We had no idea where he took that picture because we were going road to road to road. We were like in all these different cities. We had no idea. And then now all of a sudden we come upon this house again. I knock on the door and I say, hey, I'm obsessed with your house. Who's the builder? Again, we had no idea how we were going to make it work. And so if you have faith, the working out will figure itself out. So our first thing that we did was build a big house and had no idea how to afford the yard or anything else. We couldn't afford the pool, but we just kept moving one step at a time. We're just like, we're just going to keep moving forward and see what happens. Well, everything fell into place. By the time the house was done, he was making more money. By the time the house was done, I had opened up a fitness and dance studio that was also bringing in some money. And so it's like things started to flow. And at that point, it wasn't much, but it started to flow. And so from there, it's like, okay, well, if I have this dance and fitness studio, what else could I do? I loved coaching. Coaching came down the road a little bit, but it was just like all these little things started coming into place because we never gave up faith that this could happen for us. Now, the pool was no different. Like when the pool came, our kids were amazing age. By the way, we have 7 kids, so lots of kids.
Oh my
And
God.
just to throw that in there, we're juggling these 7 children. And so I was like, well, they're perfect ages for a pool. And he's like, Amy, there's no way that we're going to be able to afford this pool. Like, this cannot happen. I'm like, no, I think we'll have it by the end of the year. This was in January of one year. And I was like, we're going to figure it out. And he's like, that makes no sense on paper. No sense. And I was like, I know it doesn't, but I think we could do it by the end of the year. The memories that we're going to have in this pool are worth it. We
Yeah.
had the pool done by August. I had him convinced by March. All of the money ended up coming through and making sense. And then a year later, because we'd also invest in different companies and different things, a year later, we also got this big payout that catapulted us even more forward. And then we bought rental properties. And so it's like, when you look at, I like to tell my story this way is like, it might not make sense. It made no sense for us to build this house the time that we did, but actually it was perfect sense because what that house at that point did for us, is we moved into a neighborhood that was a high-end neighborhood in a high-end city. But now we were hanging around all of these people, like higher incomes were the norm,
Mm.
talking about bigger things that were like more meaningful and that was the norm. And so now, even though it was a total stretch at the time and I felt like an imposter, all of a sudden I was with all these people all the time where this was normalized for me.
Yeah.
And it created a window for everything else to happen. And so when you're like, can it really be that easy? Yeah, it actually can be. It can be that easy. It can be, okay, I'm going to believe this to be true for me. And I'm going to go one step at a time. I'm going to put forth the faith and I'm going to do the work. We did the work.
Yeah. I love listening to the strategy of all of this, right? That you set an intention and then you take those steps forward, and then that leap of faith, something is there to catch, right? So that you were talking about like the money flows in, or the something is there to provide for you. And that's exactly the way that I like to manifest as well. If I'm making a big investment, I will get everything. I find out all the facts, first of all, exactly how much it's going to cost me, how much money will I need. I make the decision and move forward. And always, if it's in alignment, the money
Yeah,
flows in, right? It's amazing. I mean, my partner and I, we're about to fly out to Egypt on Thursday, so 2 days from now, and on an incredible like dream holiday to Egypt, like vacation. Nearly three
amazing.
weeks we're going to be there. And I remember very clearly sitting with him on our sofa watching a documentary about Egypt in February. And I said, come on, let's manifest Egypt. We're going to go there and we're going to do all the things. We're going to do all the experiences. You know, that hotel over there, that really amazing one, we're going to stay there. And isn't it wonderful when you can come together as well with a really supportive partner? And it
Yes.
doesn't necessarily have to be a partner, but a community, other people to support you that are going to be able to support you in that vision. And I'm sure that also has a lot to do with how you have put in your boundaries, how you're building your relationships now. Because we were talking at the top of the podcast about being a nice girl and saying yes to everything and not disempowering yourself. Like, how do you feel that you're showing up now in your life and your business as opposed to how you were maybe in the past?
Yeah. Much more powerfully. The old behaviors will creep up. And at this point now, I become aware of them like, oh, there that is again. Why? I get really curious, which everything that I teach and train is around my awareness, alignment, and abundance method. And so it's like I get really aware, oh, it's coming up. That's some stuff I haven't healed. Why? And then I work on healing it. But I had to put in some really strong boundaries when I was making the changes that I made. And I lost relationships. I lost a couple of my siblings for a good couple years because they were so used to treating me in a way that wasn't okay. And so it was hard. But then on the flip side, what I have learned is when I'm true to my boundaries and when I'm truly speaking my voice and I'm doing it from a place of heart and goodness, everything works themselves out. In fact, the relationships that I lost with my siblings, they came back, they apologized, they wanted me back in their life, and now they respect me more than they ever have. And we have a more beautiful relationship. And that's also taught me a lot like, okay, so boundaries can feel really hard, especially if you're like a people pleaser like I was, is like you feel like you're being mean because you're so used to being so agreeable and so accommodating to everybody that when you say no or when you stand up for yourself, you feel like you're like this mean girl, which is everything you were taught not to be. And so by just saying, no, I don't do that anymore, or I don't accept that, or just no, I learned that you don't even have to have an excuse. You can just say that doesn't work for me. No. And people will learn to respect it and they will learn how and where to show up in your life, and your relationships can become deeper, the ones that matter. And the ones that don't matter, they no longer serve you and you just move forward. And it's such a beautiful way to live. And so that's what's worked for me. Everything ends up working themselves out. The relationships that matter, and the other ones, you outgrow them.
Yeah. Does that still come up for you? You were just saying there that this is something that you're always working on. And it reminded me of a conversation that I was having the other week with an amazing group of women who I'm
Yeah.
co-hosting a retreat with next year. And this is an interesting project, right? Because the six of us, we're all very different. We're very aligned, but six people. And
Yeah.
we're kind of trying to like work out the boundaries and the resources and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, like creating this beautiful event together. And one of the things that I was like very adamant about on a call a couple of weeks ago was the fact that I was not going to do any one-on-one coaching at the retreat. And I was like, I'll be there. And I was really like, I'll be there. I will facilitate. I will hold the space, but I am not doing any one-on-one coaching. And if anyone wants to come and have a one-on-one with me, they can come and step into my 6-month program after the retreat. And then I finished the call and I was very kind of like confident and strong in what I was saying. And I came off the call and I was like, oh my goodness, what if I've offended someone? What if they thought that I'm really nasty? Like all these. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm 50 years old. And I've been running my business now for 8 years, but it still comes. Like you have to catch it, don't you? Because it can still be there and it can still really disempower you. And I had to stop myself, literally stop myself from going into Telegram and sending a voice message and going, oh, I'm really sorry if I offended anyone. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to apologize for having my boundaries. Like,
Yeah.
how do you like deal with that?
So I'm laughing so hard right now because I'm like, yes, this is so it. So I also do a lot of work around the Enneagram. I don't know if you know what the Enneagram is. And if anyone is listening to us and don't know what the Enneagram is, go take the test, research it, take it, see what comes up for you. But the Enneagram also plays a role. It's like how we show up, right? And so I have a friend that does the exact same thing as you almost did. Every single time she comes away, she has something to apologize for later. And I always call her as like, no, I'm not even listening to what you're about to say. I'm not going to let you. So I've gotten a lot better. Whereas like after I've said what I've said, I might come away for a second and say, oh, I might have offended someone. And the next thought now, because I've really strengthened that, is, and it's okay. If they're offended, then that's on them.
Yeah.
I stood my grounds, and this is what feels good to me. So I just come right back to, okay, there's no action to take. If by chance I wronged someone, then that's going to be different. But if you're just standing your boundaries and you're like, this is what works for me, then there should be, it will come up, but when it comes up, get curious and then just put it back to bed. I'm glad you did not telegram anyone. I'm glad you stood
No, I
your
didn't.
ground,
No. And I don't do that
but
anymore.
it comes
The
up.
urge is there, right? And I completely agree with you. I always say I'm not responsible for other people's feelings. And
Yeah.
it's different, right? If you've been really horrible, like horrible, but like you say, if you're putting in your boundaries, if that's triggering someone or someone's not happy with that, then I'm not responsible for that. I'm very straight in
Yeah.
my boundaries and what I want to do. So yeah, but there's still that like,
It
please
still can come
like
up.
me. Like, it's still
Please like
there.
me. I know, but you know what? You're not the flavor for everyone, and that's okay. I'm too much for so many people. They're like, man, you're so intimidating, which makes me laugh because I'm like, I feel like I'm warm, but I come across really intimidating. And I'm like, okay, well, that's okay. Like, I'm not for her. But then other people are like, oh my gosh, I love your energy. You're so much fun. I'm like, okay, that's my person.
Yeah.
Not everyone likes peaches, and it's okay. But, when you're taught that you're supposed to be liked by everyone, but letting go of it can be pretty freeing.
Yeah.
So,
It
but it
really
comes up, it comes up. We're human.
We are, we are. Me, I'm really conscious of the time, but I really want you to share a little bit about your work because I know that
Yeah.
you have a methodology, and this is something that you're going to be focusing on as well, isn't it? On the
Mm.
stage when you speak on the Women Thrive Summit. So, how does like this tie in with the work that you do? Because you obviously, I know that you've got multiple businesses, but it feels to me like whenever I speak to you about it, it really is the coaching that like lights you up.
Yeah. It's the
Um,
coaching. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. And really, everything that I teach in the coaching bleeds into all of my other businesses. And it bleeds into, and so if you come in and you hire me as a coach, whether you're business specific or whether you just want to learn how to create more abundance in your life, it's the principles are going to be the same. And so I know I hit on it a little bit earlier, but my three things that I really focus on is becoming aware. It's like you basically have to rebirth yourself, becoming aware of everything that's going around you, what you've accepted, how you're speaking to yourself, how you're allowing other people to speak to yourself, where you're self betraying. I mean, if you look at me, I said yes to marrying a person like, for 11 years. So I was really good at self-betrayal. And then really getting curious is like, why? Like, what do you believe to be true? So I know I've talked about a lot of this, but this is like who you believe you are. Like, you are more than a mom. You are more than a wife. You are more than a dance instructor, if that's what you want. I'm a dance instructor. Are you? So it's like really getting curious is like, who are you really? What are the labels and titles that you have put on yourself that you are now living a role as instead of who you truly are? And then I teach you how to shift into your true identity, which is like really shifting into a whole other paradigm. This is when you become in alignment. So, going back to my story at the beginning of the episode, where I was like, I was freaking out head to toe, I was in a panic attack, my gut was in knots. It's because my body was so far out of alignment, and my body was telling me, like, do not marry him, don't do it. Like, all of the signs were alarming full speed ahead. And yet I still just ignored them all to please him. The scariness of telling him no was bigger than just completely self-betraying. And so that I do a lot of work around teaching you how to listen to your body, how to come into alignment. And this also has to do with feminine versus masculine energy. This has to do with muscle testing, learning how to listen to body, mind, and soul, making sure they're in complete alignment. Because when they're in complete alignment, when you're able to shift into a different paradigm, it is still your true identity. You're actually coming deeper into your identity. And that's also what helped me start to attract everything that I wanted to. And so we do a lot of deep dives on what you believe about yourself, how to clear those beliefs, what you can believe to be true for you, and then also how to show up in that energy. So when you're showing up as if it's already happening, we hit on this a little bit with the manifesting when you're like, I'm just moving forward. This is what we're doing. We're just going to keep going. You are living in a higher identity,
Mm.
believing that this is happening for you, like no matter what. And then as you do that, the abundance starts to flow. And that's my third piece that I talk about. Because when the abundance starts to flow, now what? Abundance looks different for different people too. Some people, money is easy to measure. So we talk about that a lot, like, oh, all the money. But it looks different for different people. Sometimes money's not it, or just enough money is enough. It's like abundance is going to look different. But what does it look like for you? And how do we create that life that is going to be the life that you love? And I have a lot of different programs just even within the abundance piece that people can take. One's called Money Magnet Mastery. Another one's called, because I do teach people how to coach too, is like coaching in a box. There's a lot of stuff on entrepreneurship. And then all the different things that happen, like that can create abundance in your life. That's essentially what the third thing is. So I said it really fast, but that is the work that I do. I love it. It's so fun seeing women light up. And I know you feel the same way because you're in a very similar field as me. It's like you see someone and you start to work with them, and then you see their life start to unfold. And it's incredible, like just seeing the transformation. So yeah, this is where I love to live, even though I have my hands in a bunch of different things. This is my passion for sure.
I can tell it just completely lights you up, and that's why you're so successful at it. And
Thanks.
you just absolutely love it. And yes, I mean, for me, it's the biggest privilege of my life to be able to see someone, like to see who they are, see their higher self, and then to witness them stepping into that and truly believing it themselves. It's
Mhm.
like, it's amazing. That's why we do what
Yeah.
we do. And I'm just so excited that you're going to be speaking on our stage, or if you're, depending on when you're listening to the podcast. So you've either, we're about to move into the summit in a few months' time as we're recording this, or you might be listening to this in a few years in the future and you
Yep.
stumbled across Amy, and you can go and immediately go and watch her talk, and all the links will be below. But we are really excited to have you on our summit
Thank you.
and looking forward to your talk. And for anyone who is listening, and I'm sure there'll be lots of people that will be listening that want to find out more about you and want to follow you and be in your world and be in your energy, where is the best place to find you? Like, where do you hang out? Where can they contact you
Yeah.
and follow you?
The biggest place is probably Instagram, just Coach Amy Sanders, just like it sounds. And then my website is the same. It's amysanders.co. And then I also have a lot of free coaching that I do inside my Facebook group. But if you go to any of the other two things, you'll be able to find a link to my Facebook group. It's a closed group, but we do a lot of coaching and healing within that group as well. So those are the three top places.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy, for coming on and being on our podcast and being part of the community. It's just such a pleasure to hang out with you today.
Thank you. It's been an honor. It's been fun. So thank you as well.
And I'm glad that we both said yes to like coming on the podcast together in an empowered way.
Yes, exactly. Oh, good.
Thank,
So
thank
good.
you so much, everyone, for watching, for listening. I'd love to know your ideas and thoughts, how you relate to any of the story that Amy has told so beautifully today about her life. And are you a recovering people pleaser? We'd love to know. Make sure that you follow Amy and you reach out to her. You can always contact us here at Women Thrive. Thank you for being part of our community. Thank you for listening to this podcast. And we will see you again very soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Women Thrive podcast. If you found today's episode empowering and inspiring, be sure to subscribe and follow us. Better yet, leave a review and share it with others. We're committed to bringing you more stories that will empower and inspire you on your own journey. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep pursuing your dreams.